Disclaimer. I am a law student. Any legal information provided is not legal advice. For that, please hire an attorney. That's good tea. That's the tea, says. All right. So what we're going to be talking about next is something that happened yesterday. And I gotta say, I wasn't expecting it, but I'm also not surprised. And for those of you who aren't aware, first off, what rock are you living under? But for those of you who are not, yesterday I was told, someone who I was hanging out with told me that this happened. Trump administration erases transgender civil rights protection in healthcare. A rule finalized on Friday by the Department of Health and Human Services means that the federal government no longer recognizes gender identity as an avenue for sex discrimination in healthcare. Yeah, there's a lot to unpack here. The thing that's most interesting to me about this, the thing that's most someone commented, I want to point that out, on the anniversary of Pulse. Can we talk for a moment about the fact that Trump literally did this? Trump literally did this in the middle of Pride Month while we're dealing with a pandemic and we're dealing with like riots in the street and protests about systemic racism. While we're dealing with all of this fucking shit, like multiple historic events, and in the middle of Pride Month, on the same day, on the anniversary as Pulse, what goes through Trump's mind? What does he think is the most important thing to do? Let's take away the protections of trans people in healthcare. Like, what can I say but yikes? To quote a much larger YouTuber than I am. But yeah, let's talk about this for a little bit, shall we? So earlier, when I was talking to Jody, we had a conversation about like some of the things that people will experience, some various forms of discrimination that people will experience. And we talked a lot about people's experience in healthcare. I think that it's a common misconception that a lot of people have that, people don't discriminate against LGBT people. That was some odd years ago, right? Or at least that's generally what I hear. For example, my family, and especially my mother, will often say things like when, for example, I'll have conversations with my mother about the fact that like people who are trans, especially trans children, when they come out to their family will be like completely ostracized from their family and just like kicked out of their homes and onto the street. And my mom wants to look at me and be like, holy shit, Riley, that's absolutely absurd. What kind of family, what kind of mother, what kind of father would ever fucking do that? But the answer is that it happens a lot. It happens way too fucking often. And I've worked with people, again, this is what I did in Memphis, I have worked with people who've been in that exact same position. I lived with someone who effectively was in that position for a bit of time in her life. Of course, she was able to do decently well. And I think that a lot of people don't think that discrimination happens in healthcare. But just to talk about the discussion that we had with Jody a little bit ago, again, for people who were not present, you can go back or eventually you can rewatch the video that I will upload about that, and you can see the research document. I'll try and pin that in the video that I repost, but you can also see it in my Discord in the research channel in the pinned comments. I think it's like 1 in 4 trans people experience discrimination in healthcare places or by someone operating in the healthcare field, whether it's because of lack of access to information on how to deal with trans people, or whether it's just because of the bigoted beliefs of medical professionals. I want people to let that sink in for a second. All right? 1 in 4 trans people are on average discriminated against by healthcare providers. Before, the only thing that we really had going for us, like the only thing we really had going for us was the fact that we had some decent protections under the law as a protected class. That's really all that we had to be able to combat this sort of thing. And now we don't. And there's really, I mean, like, I shouldn't have to be in a position where I have to explain to people why this is absolutely terrible. Like, I feel bad for having to make this video or talk about this on stream. But, like, think about this, people. If you put trans people who otherwise, it is medically necessary for them to get the healthcare that they need, whether it is medication or surgeries or what have you, right? Like, I have to go to the doctor every couple months, sometimes even quicker if I have, like, some issues going on with my body or if I'm otherwise sick, right? Because I have additional things to worry about than the average person because of the fact that I'm trans, right? I have to go to the doctor every single month, or not every single month, like every 2 to 3 months. I have to get tested. I have to get re-prescribed my medication. And then if I get sick, I still have to interact with doctors, right? Like, could you imagine if I got sick and I just showed up at the hospital and I was like, hey, doctor, I'm sick. And they're like, well, fuck you. You're a fucking slur or whatever, right? Like, could you imagine if someone did that just because of the fact that I'm trans? They just turn me away, even though I otherwise have insurance, even though I otherwise have everything that I need to be able to get treatment. And they turn me away. And I'm either not able to get tested, or I'm not able to get my medications filled, or I'm not able to get the treatment that I need for whatever it is I'm dealing with. As I said earlier, I maintain the belief that healthcare is a human right. If you are denied healthcare, at worst, you can fucking die. And the sad part about this, like the really, really, really sad part about this, is that this is probably going to end up killing some trans people. Like, almost certainly. Especially people who live in the South or places where otherwise trans acceptance is not very high. I worry about my friends in the South who still have to live there and who aren't able to move because of the cost of moving. I know that people have talked earlier about, oh, well, if you don't like the area, just move to a different one. Except it's not as easy as that. There are tons of costs of moving. Then you also have to make sure that you have a job. Like, you have to make sure that you have a job wherever you're moving, and that's even harder. You ever try getting a job before you move? It's fucking difficult. Especially if you don't come from a position in life where you're very employable, heavy quotations, from early on. So yeah, the thing that's most astounding to me about this, or I shouldn't say most astounding, but something that is very clear to my mind, or something I've definitely taken notice of, is that a lot of people want to try and defend Trump as someone who doesn't actually hate trans people and doesn't actually hate LGBT people. He doesn't actually try to take away their rights, is usually what they'll say. He doesn't actually try to do anything which will substantively harm them. Like with this, what evidence do you need beyond this? Like, what more do you need to show that he's just a bigot and that he just hates trans people? And fuck, he's also a racist. For people who haven't seen it, I literally made a video talking about the fact that he recently just called, like, because of the riots and everything relating to, like, the death of George Floyd and like everyone else recently, that he literally called, like, all the protesters thugs. And he had a tweet of his literally praising violence against them, or like approving of violence against them, taken off of Twitter, or not taken off Twitter, but like heavily reported to where it was like delisted off of Twitter. For people who are watching, I want to just get one thing clear to you. I just want to get, if anything, just one thing clear, because I want to ask you, what more evidence could you possibly ask for that this man is a bigot. Like, what more could you possibly ask for? Like, at this point, is it literally like, is the threshold for bigotry like actually trying to arrest us and put us in concentration camps? Because if this doesn't meet the definition of bigotry, I don't know what does. This is going to be especially important because in November, we're going to be voting. There's going to be an election. And it's going to be a really tough election because his crowd is going to come out swinging. And we cannot take any chances. Please, please do not vote for him. And please vote for whoever the Democratic nominee is. It will likely be Biden. And I am sorry that that means voting for Biden. But please vote this man out of office. He has harmed me. He has harmed the trans community. He has harmed the black community. He's harmed basically every minority community at this point. If you don't believe that he has met the threshold for bigotry, I don't know what'll do it.